Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm going to take some water because I'm losing my voice.
Probably should too.
Hopefully I did that more deftly than Marco Rubio when he did that during his response. My name is Richard Heyl de Ortiz. I am the Executive Director of the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York. The coalition is our state's foster and adoptive family association. We were founded in the activist era of the 1960s, specifically because parents felt that their local communities, the state, was not addressing their issues. The coalition was then and continues to be a parent-led, not-for-profit organization. Our mission is to provide support, information, training, and advocacy for foster families, adoptive families, and because of issues like diversion that Jerry spoke of, increasingly, relatives who are raising children. Our vision is that no family, no foster, adoptive, or kinship parent should feel alone or unsupported. The coalition has 3 offices throughout the state and over 70 affiliated parent and volunteer-led support groups. We provide free 24/7 helpline for foster, adoptive, and kinship families. We host the state's annual Foster Care and Adoption Conference. We provide post-adoption and post-guardianship support to families and children in 15 counties and offer training to foster parents, adoptive parents, relative caregivers, and child welfare professionals throughout the state. We also have a fledgling foster and kinship care support program, which increasingly acts as an ombudsman to mediate issues that arise when local departments of social services or foster care agencies do not follow state law and federal regulation, state and federal law and regulation. This is something that others have spoken about today. Finally, as part of our mission, we advocate for changes and improvements to our foster care system. Changes that are not just well-intended, that will work for families that are resolutely committed to our state's most vulnerable and traumatized children. And I really like what Paige shared about their Family First slogan or their tagline. It is extremely important that all of us, as we consider what we believe families need, that we involve families in those decisions, and we make sure that changes to our system are exactly what families need. I speak of what I know in this regard because I myself am an adoptive father. My husband and I adopted our son, John Paul, from the foster care system when he was 9. I am extraordinarily grateful for that on the one hand, and I like to joke that our little family represents the diversity that is our system today. John Paul, a black child named after the Pope, and who is now a young man serving the Army, adopted by a gay Jew, me, and his Puerto Rican husband. This bit of levity, however, does not erase the fact that foster and adoptive parents such as me continue to struggle with our system. As an example, my son spent 2 additional years in foster care when there was a family willing and able, us, to adopt him, all because 2 caseworkers allowed their biases to dictate their actions and because law and regulations were not followed. In short, they lied and my son paid the price. We lost 2 of his formative years, years that we simply cannot get back. This lie, the deliberate dismissal of law, regulation, and good practice, made parenting him infinitely and unnecessarily more difficult. I'd like to say that things like this do not happen any longer, but I know that they do. The bottom line is that we all want children to be supported, to have the best possible outcomes in the fallout of their parents' struggle. While our system is doing much to make this happen, and while there are many good and dedicated people among our state's child welfare leadership, we are missing the mark in a number of ways. First, our state provides inadequate stipends to foster parents, both relative and non-relative. Federal law dictates that foster parents, including both relative and non-relative foster parents, must be reimbursed for the costs related to children placed in their home. Our state simply does not do this. We have a crazy quilt of foster care stipends with varying amounts and endless permutations by county. While the press makes much hay out of the outlier, the foster parent who abuses the system, the fact of the matter is that the lion's share of foster parents struggle to meet the needs of the children placed in their homes, children they come to love, and with the meager stipend provided to them by their county or agency, it is often simply not enough. Too often, children in foster care who already feel less than must go without. This is simply shameful. Second, direct placement, diversion, what Jerry has spoken about and other states have spoken about. Our state talks proudly about how our foster care census, the number of children in foster care, has declined over the past decade, and this is laudable. In a strict sense, it is true, but if we flip over the coin, we would see that the number of children shunted into direct placement with fictive kin or relatives has grown substantially over the same period. Direct placement, though supervised by family court judges, is a less than hidden system. Often we find that relatives in this situation are not informed that they have the right to become foster parents, or that they have options available to them, or the information is not provided to them in a way that they can really understand and access. As direct placement resources, these relatives, these fictive kin, receive less casework support and less financial support, if any, as others have testified to. Finally, for children, the path to permanency, the road out of this de facto foster care, is less clear for children who are diverted in this way. If their parents cannot reasonably regain custody, these children cannot be adopted with a subsidy. This is an inequity when compared to children in foster care, and one that disproportionately affects relative caregivers and the children they care for. These children often go without for years as a result of this, and live in another world devoid of the security they deserve. The practice throughout our state should be that of New York City, where, by default, every relative caregiver becomes a foster parent unless they cannot be qualified or certified. This is equitable and fair both to caregivers and to our children. Third, for relatives and fictive kin, the only option for financial support is something that I will call a child-only TANF grant. Other people have used different terminology, and that's part of the problem. Every single county seems to call this something different. The testimony earlier that someone did not get this because they did not know or understand the right terminology for Albany County is absolutely shameful. While the support varies by county, or the name varies county by county, what is consistent is that this support in and of itself is less than our already inadequate foster care stipends. So we are saying to relatives that we may or may not tell they couldn't become foster parents that they deserve less financial support than those who make a deliberate decision to become foster parents. In addition, as others have testified, there is declining financial support for relatives who take in multiple children. Finally, way too often, as we have heard, relatives are never informed that they have access to this critical financial support. Our helpline takes way too many calls from relatives struggling with no financial support, some of them for years. And why, may you ask, is this important? Well, when someone decides to become a foster parent, it is a deliberate decision. I'm talking about non-relatives. Couples or individuals must ensure that they have the resources and the bandwidth to take in and care for traumatized children. A relative, however, all too often gets a phone call and must make a snap decision. Right. They have no ability to plan or to make the space. If we are to allow direct placements to continue, for diversion to continue, every relative caregiver should receive a child-only TANF grant. It should not be happenstance. It should not happen according to whim or geography. Fourth, in all cases of foster care, our state does not do enough to foster collaborative, supportive relationships between the foster parent or caregiver and the biological parent. In fact, way too often, caseworkers act like real estate brokers, keeping parties separated from one another. In addition, our family court system is an adversarial system, a winner-take-all system with children at the center. Our state should be doing much more to bring biological parent and foster parent together as soon as reasonably possible after a child enters care. Some counties, like Suffolk County, are experimenting with this, and it is laudable that they are. The state should promote, not dissuade relationships between foster and biological parents. This could have extraordinary benefit for children who would experience less disconnection, greater support, and not face the choice of deciding where their loyalty lies. This could also have promise for biological parents who could benefit from supportive mentoring by an experienced foster parent, especially during that very vulnerable period in which a parent regains custody of their child, many of whom are parenting for the first times in their lives sober, and they're being watched. The mentoring that could be provided if these relationships were fostered by our system could really be significant. We could be promoting lifelong connection and support for children and families instead of a landscape of disruption and lost connection. Fifth, in terms of connection and continuity, we must do something about the turnover of staff in our child welfare system. It is chronic. With each departure, a part of a child's history leaves. In addition, high turnover means uneven application and knowledge of the laws and regulations that govern foster and kinship care. Sixth, in family court, foster parents, even those who have long, deep connections to children and who want to adopt children when their parents cannot regain custody, these foster parents are not afforded legal representation. Foster parents are at a distinct disadvantage as every other party has the benefit of appointed representation. This inequity is especially harmful as it is often the foster parent who cares for a child each and every day while they are in care and who has deep, intimate knowledge of the child's mindset, emotional state, and trauma. This glaring omission in terms of lack of representation must change. Seventh, this is perhaps the most important. We have a layered foster and kinship care system in New York. We are just one of 9 states in the country that have a state-supervised, county-administered system. Within counties, we sometimes have multiple contracted foster care agencies. We also have the engagement of family court. All of these layers, along with turnover, concern about budgets, biases, etc., lead to an uneven application of law and regulations. Worse than this, there is no effective accountability in our system. No real place for a foster parent or a relative caregiver to turn for effective, fair, and most importantly, timely resolution of discrepancies or disputes. You heard testimony earlier today about how long it has taken for one relative just to get the financial support she was entitled to. That is just one example. Additionally, there is presently no entity that has the teeth to ensure that laws and regulations are followed and to ensure consequences when they are not. There are ways that OCFS can promote long-term compliance, but it does not help a family in the immediate. Some of this disregard for our foster care laws and regulations is unintentional. Some of it is not. All of it, when it happens, should be remedied in child-sensitive time that will have an impact on that individual child. We need an ombudsman or an office of advocacy to do this. That exists in New York City. Other states have this vehicle. Why don't we? My final thing is regarding the regional permanency resource centers, something that our organization is very fortunate to be part of. We cannot, as has been pointed out by others, serve the extraordinary number of families who have been created through orders of custody. These are relatives and sometimes fictive kin who are caring for children who are demographically exactly the same as those in foster care or those who have become part of their family through adoption or guardianship. And yet, because of a foible or an oddity in our practice in New York State, we cannot provide support to them. We are putting these children at risk. We are putting them at risk of returning to foster care, and we are treating them unfairly. It simply has to change. We must be able to provide support to these families after custody. Or if custody is not a viable option for that, we have to change our system and get rid of that and focus on guardianship. All of these factors feed into our current and ongoing dilemma that even in the face of reduced numbers of children in foster care, Our state continues to struggle with recruiting and retaining foster parents. Too many good foster parents leave in disgust, not because of traumatized children, but because of the disrespect they experience, because of the freewheeling, inconsistent nature of our system. Let's remember that this negatively impacts the very children our foster care system is set up to help. And that, my friends, is the bottom line.
Well, thank you. It's so good to see you again. Very intense and comprehensive discussion. You suggested the children placed within kinship are not counted in the foster care census. So that creates a situation where you really don't have the numbers.
Right, it absolutely does. I mean, a couple of months ago, I happened to be in one county downstate while the county executive was talking about was boasting about the reduction in foster care, which is wonderful. And there probably are a variety of factors for that. Some of them are likely the focus on prevention that our state has. But the reality is that in that county, their numbers of direct placements of diverted cases have increased dramatically. That's an example of the fact that we are not counting children, and we are doing things to help our bottom line, our budget, on a county-by-county basis that are not good for children.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's it. That's it. Well, I really appreciate everyone joining us today and having this very, very important conversation. Very enlightening and really raises much of the concerns that I've been hearing throughout the communities. But we need to work together. We need to stand together and look at very specific actions that need to be taken, either through legislation and certainly through the budget as well. But it's very, very comprehensive in the conversation today, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to work with my colleagues and many of you to be able to move forward and provide much more substantial action taken so that we can really offer these children and families an environment, a lifestyle that gives them the opportunity to have a stable and productive future. So thank you so much for your commitment to this very important issue, to these children. Thank you very much.